Hello, Sparkers! Welcome back to Easy English Spark, your cozy corner for boosting English listening and speaking skills right at home. Today we're launching a brand new story series that will carry you from the snowy peaks of Frost-Glen to a valley bursting with music and light. In 10 bite-sized chapters, starting with the Frost-Glen family and ending in Frost-Glen's new dawn, you'll follow Lyra, Cora, and Selene as they turn courage into miracles. Here's the plan. Listen to each chapter's narrated mini-episode. Shadow speak. Key lines to polish pronunciation. Spark talk with quick prompts that help you use the new phrases in real life. Ready to build confidence, fluency, and a little fairy tale magic all at once. Let's dive into Chapter 1 and light up your English. Journey together. Chapter 1. The Frost-Glen family. Nestled in a narrow cradle of snow-dusted peaks lies a village few travelers ever reach, a place the locals simply call Frost-Glen. Imagine steep-roofed cottages clustered like sleepy lambs around a half-frozen river, their windows glowing amber against the long northern night. The air is sharp with pine and wood smoke, and every sound, hammer on anvil, axe on log, seems to ring a little brighter in the frosty hush. It is here, on the last lane before the forest begins, that our story opens. In a crooked house of gray stone and weathered cedar lives Marta Frost, a woman as resilient as the mountain rock beneath her feet. Once she was the finest potter in 3 valleys. Her clay jars sang when tapped, and her glazes caught the auroras in their sheen. But the sudden death of her husband, a quarryman, left her to raise their 3 daughters alone. Worse still, the previous winter's storm smashed her kiln to rubble and buried the best clay seam under a landslide. Since then, she has fired only tiny hearth kilns, enough to mend a mug or shape a humble bowl. Never again the grand urns that once brought coin to her door. Marta's eldest daughter is Selene, tall, steady, and thoughtful, with eyes the color of dusk. She can read the night sky as other folk read a letter, naming every star that flares above the ridge. When the village watches for omens of weather, they turn first to her quiet certainty. The middle girl, Cora, is quick to laugh and quicker to learn. Place any instrument in her hands, and within an hour she can coax a melody. She mends broken lutes for the traveling minstrels who pass through on feast days, and can whistle 2 parts in harmony with the wind through the pines. And then there is Lyra, the youngest, small as a wren, stubborn as a lynx, with a smile bright, enough to melt an icicle. Where Selene studies and Cora sings, Lyra builds toy sleds, birdhouses, little clockworks that chime on the hour even when the hour is buried beneath snow. All winter long the sisters rise before dawn to stoke the fire. Selene hauls the water, her breath a white plume in the dark. Cora chops kindling and hums to keep her fingers warm. Lyra tends the goats, a pair of shaggy nannies named Birch and Bramble, brushing frost from their beards and teasing them with dried apples saved from summer. Marta, meanwhile, shapes rough clay trinkets by the faint orange glow of embers, each piece an act of quiet defiance against hunger. Yet try as they might, silver grows scarce. The grain bin echoes hollowly before the first crocus shows its head, and the goat's milk thins with the cold. The village baker, old Alderic, extends credit until his own shelves run bare. Even the parish bell ringer, who once owed Marta 3 harvest pies, can offer nothing but a sorrowful shrug. Pride, however, is a stern companion. Marta refuses to beg. Instead, she measures every crumb and whispers courage to the girls as they huddle beneath a single patched quilt. One iron blue morning, after counting the last of the rye kernels, Marta gathers her daughters around the hearth. Flames lick at the soot-black stones while a draft prowls under the door. Marta sets her hands on her knees, hands cracked by clay and winter, then speaks with calm finality. "My loves," she says, "the mountain has given all it can, and I have no more to offer in return. The world beyond Frost-Glen is wide, and it holds work for those willing to learn. If we stay, hunger will teach harsher lessons than any master. But if you go, each to her own path, each to earn her own wage, perhaps next winter no child in this house will wake cold." Selene opens her mouth first, not to protest, but to steady her sisters. "We will send coin home at every turn of the moon," she promises. Cora squeezes Marta's shoulder and declares that music is a currency wherever hearts still beat. Lyra says nothing, only nods once with fierce determination. That very week, the sisters prepare. Marta stitches travel cloaks from a quilt once bright with festival ribbons. Selene packs her father's worn field glass and a slim almanac bound in calfskin. Cora wraps her reed pipe in oilcloth beside a vial of pine pitch for repairs. Lyra tucks chisels, awls, and a carving knife into a belt of her own design, each tool oiled and gleaming. On the eve of their departure, the village gathers in the snowy square, lanterns bobbing like captive stars. Alderic breaks his own fast to gift the sisters a loaf laced with honey. The bell ringer offers 3 silver buttons from his coat for good luck. Even the goats nuzzle rough farewells through the fence rails. At dawn, the sisters set out, Selene striding toward the coast where the observatory domes catch first light. Cora following the river road in search of minstrels and markets. Lyra aiming for the lumber towns beyond the lakes where woodworkers trade in invention. Marta stands alone at the gate, kiln smoke curling behind her, watching until the last bright swatch of cloak disappears into the whiteness. Then she turns, squares her shoulders, and kneels beside the shattered kiln. Hope, like a seed beneath snow, waits for spring. Thus ends our first chapter. A tale of love tested by hardship, of 3 daughters flung like sparks into the wide world, and of a mother whose faith in them burns hotter than any flame her ruined kiln can muster. The road ahead will challenge each sister in ways none of them can yet imagine. But remember this moment, this snowy crossroads, for every journey henceforth will point back to Frost-Glen and the promise they made beneath its silent, watchful peaks. Chapter 2. Lyra and the Ever-Full Satchel. Picture a trail carved into the spine of the mountains, its switchbacks veiled by early spring fog. I invite you to follow the youngest Frost sister, Lyra, whose red cloak flickers like a single ember against walls of granite and snow. She travels alone now, boots crunching through old drifts, goat skin pack thumping at her back, every breath a plume that dissolves in the raw morning air. For 3 days she descends from Frost-Glen, past Pine, stands whispering of home until the land softens into foothills quilted with heather. On the 4th dawn, the fog parts, and there, cupped by a silver lake, rests Dawnmere, a town that seems to float upon its own reflection. Sun-bleached timber houses shoulder narrow lanes, jetties reach into crystalline water, and along the Eastern Key rise workshops humming with hammers, knives, and rasping files. Dawnmere is famed for leather craft, and Lyra has come to prove herself there. She finds apprenticeship at the smallest tannery on the wharf, a 2-story shop whose sign is little more than an inked handprint above the door. Elsar Craft. Its master, Warden Elsar, is a barrel-bodied widower with a beard plaited into twin braids. His fingers, though thick as broom stems, can skive hide to a whisper-thin sheet, or sew a saddle seam so tight it rings when tapped. He studies Lyra's calloused palms and bright, unflinching gaze, then rumbles, "I hire patience, not brawn. If you can listen longer than you talk, we have a bargain." Lyra nods once. The pact is sealed. The year of apprenticeship. Days begin before sunrise. Lyra hauls sloshing vats of lye, salts rawhides, and pounds them on granite tables until her shoulders ache. She scrapes hair from cow skins with a curved blade, careful to leave no gouge. At night, she copies Warden's sketches, harness parts, satchel gussets, moccasin soles, onto crinkled parchment by candlelight. Weeks stretch into months. Spring floods the lake with meltwater. Summer cloaks dawn-mere in the scent of sun-dried hide and lilac. Lyra's hands, once nimble yet unsure, learn the slow rhythm of the awl. Pierce, angle, pull, tighten. She dyes a purse forest green using nettles she gathered herself. Warden wordlessly hangs it in the front window, and by noon, it is sold for more coin than she has ever held. One long evening in mid-autumn, Warden beckons her to the upstairs loft. "You have mastered what books can teach," he says, laying a strip of supple calfskin before her. "Now craft something that did not exist yesterday. Let instinct guide the blade." For 3 nights, Lyra designs, unpicks, and redesigns, till finally a small travel satchel lies finished. Double-stitched seams, brass buckles scavenged from a shipyard trunk, a secret pocket hidden beneath the lining. When she presents it, Warden tests every clasp, then utters a single word, "sound," and sets it on the highest shelf. Winter returns. Snow frets against the shuttered shop, and the lake freezes into a mirror of black glass. Inside, the fire pops, tools gleam, and apprentice and master labor side by side in companionable silence. If Lyra misses her mother and sisters, she buries the ache beneath layers of discipline. The Farewell Supper. On the final night of her 12th month, Warden sets a simple feast: lake trout baked with rosemary, dark rye, and a crock of huckleberry, wine. After the meal, he produces an object swaddled in indigo felt. It is her own satchel, but changed. The leather is no longer calfskin brown. It shimmers with undertones of burgundy and midnight blue. The brass buckles bear tiny constellations. She never carved. "I have a parting gift," the old craftsman says. "Yet power requires understanding." He gestures for her to sit. "Say the words. Supper time." Lyra hesitates, then speaks. The satchel ripples. Yes, ripples, like stone quiet water struck by wind, and its flap unlatches of its own accord. Instant aromas fill the loft: roasted chestnuts, herb soup, fresh-baked barley bread still steaming. Plates and cups materialize beside the dishes as if summoned from the air. Her jaw slackens. Warden laughs, a deep riverbed chuckle. "An ever-full satchel. Whisper the command, and it will serve a meal tailored to hunger and health. Whisper again, and it cleans itself of crumbs and china." He spreads his hands. No gold purse could buy such comfort for a journey. Use it wisely, never for vanity, and it will never fail you. Lyra touches the satchel as though it might vanish. Why give this to me? Because you earned it, he replies simply. You stitched its shell. I wove its spell. And because in your eyes I see a fire like the one that once drove me across oceans. Return to your mountains, girl. Feed those who fed you. Setting out. Dawn breaks slate blue and silent. At the edge of town, Warden grips Lyra's forearms. Remember, he says, a full belly thinks more kindly of the world. Travel light, walk true. Then he retreats before she can see the shine in his eyes. Lyra scans the road ahead. Frozen fields, distant ridges, the faint thread of smoke that marks some farmhouse breakfast. She slips the satchel's strap across her chest, surprisingly weightless, and presses the flap shut. With a steady breath, she sets one boot, then another, onto the rutted path north. Behind her dawn mere stirs, shop shutters rise, gulls wheel over ice, and Warden Elsar hammers the tannery door plaque back into place. Ahead lies the red lantern. In, and a web of trials she cannot yet imagine. But in this moment, Lyra's heart is light, her pockets empty, and her satchel brimming with possibility. Thus concludes Chapter 2, where diligence meets enchantment, and the first spark of magic enters our tale on a scrap of leather stitched by patient hands. Chapter 3. The Red Lantern Inn. A week's march north of Dawnmere, where the great highway forks toward 4 distant kingdoms, there stands a weather-beaten coaching house known by every caravaner and peddler on the frontier, the Red Lantern Inn. Travelers swear you can find it even in a midnight blizzard, for its crimson paper lamps burn day and night, dangling from crooked eaves like watchful eyes. The inn squats on a rise above the road, half timber, half stone, its walls stained the color of old smoke. Outside, a battered milestone reads, 70 leagues to Frost-Glen. It is late afternoon when Lyra Frost crests that rise. She is footsore, cloak hem-crusted with sleet, and the ever-full satchel bumps reassuringly against her hip. Though her spirit is keen, 7 days of winter wind have carved hollows beneath her eyes. So the sight of lantern light wobbling in, the dusk fills her with a sudden homely relief. Nothing, she thinks, beats a warm fire and a straw mattress after cold miles. The courtyard is busy despite the hour. A coach bound for the boreal capital waits beneath the coach shelter, steam pluming from its horses. A tinker's wagon, painted with fading moons and stars, lists to one side while its owner haggles over shoeing a mule. Yet over all this bustle presides Magnus Graves, the innkeeper, a tall, narrow man in a sage-green waistcoat, silver hair slicked flat, a ring of keys clinking at his belt like tiny iron bones. His smile, when it comes, feels practiced, as though he's spent years polishing it in the barroom mirror. Lyra steps onto the threshold. Warm, ale-scented air rolls over her, carrying the crackle of a hearth and the faint, spicy perfume of mulled cider. She pushes back her hood. "Evening, Master Innkeeper," she says, voice rough with road dust. "A bed for the night if your ledger allows, and a place to dry my boots." Magnus bows just enough to satisfy courtesy. A coin secures a cot. "Young traveler, and 2 more see you fed." Lyra earns startled stares from men with tankards when she replies, "I'll pay for the bed, but supper is kindly covered." She pats the satchel at her side. "I have my own arrangements." A flicker, not of candlelight but of calculation, passes across Magnus's pale eyes. He nods her through the tap room, then signals a serving boy named Oren to fetch her water. For washing. As Lyra lingers by the fire, she unbuckles the satchel and whispers the single word, "Supper time." Instantly the bag yawns open, unfurling a feast rich enough for a noble's table. Steaming root stew, oat bread with honey crust, a wedge of creamy mountain cheese, and a russet apple that still looks dew-damp from the orchard. Gasps ripple around the room. Oren nearly drops his pitcher. The tinker's customers lean in for a better view. Even the poker-faced coach driver abandons his mild ale to stare. Lyra, cheeks warming, invites them to share. After all, the bag refills itself at the next command. A grateful company gathers, bowls are ladled full, and soon the tap room resonates with spoon clinks and sighs of contentment. All the while, Magnus polishes pewter mugs behind the counter, yet his gaze never strays far from that enchanted satchel. He watches it close of its own accord, watches Lyra's careful hand check the buckles, watches her slide it beneath her chair as naturally as another traveler might cradle a purse. The whispering hour. Night deepens. Patrons drift off to hammocks. In the loft or bedchambers under the eaves, Magnus shows Lyra to a modest room on the 2nd floor. A low-slung rafters slope overhead, fragrant with old cedar, and a frosted window frames the in-yard lanterns. "Mind your step on the stair," Magnus says, setting a stub of candle on the washstand. The 3rd tread creaks, wakes every sleeper in the house. "Thank you," Lyra replies, smiling. She wishes him good night, bolts the door, and sets the ever-full satchel on a stool beside her pack. But in the tap room, Magnus does not retire. Instead, he pours himself a finger of sour brandy and leans across the bar to his stable hand, grubby, sharp-eared Rennick, and mutters instructions too low for any lingering guest to catch. Rennick nods, slips into the stable yard, and shuffles, off into the blackness beyond the lamplight. Upstairs, Lyra sinks wearily onto the mattress. She scribbles in a leather notebook, supplies spent, miles crossed, dawn departure, and then, with the muffled joy of bird wings, sleep gathers around her. A thief in candle shadow. At the hour sailors call the dog watch, a key turns with feline softness in Lyra's lock. Magnus steps inside, shoeless, candle cupped so as not to scatter light beyond a narrow tunnel of glow. Rennick waits beyond the doorframe, clutching a lumpy parcel. Magnus's greed beats loud in his chest. A bag that feeds the world, he marvels. With such a marvel, I could charge princes for croutons and paupers for crumbs. Never again will hunger dull my table or my purse. He lifts the satchel, slow, from the stool. In its place he sets Rennick's imitation. Same size, same washed-out burgundy leather, but ordinary to the seams. He checks Lyra's breathing. She does not stir. Then, easing the door shut, he slips away on silent feet. Back in a cellar storeroom, he hides the real satchel under a heap of barley sacks, covering leather with grain husks. Rennick receives a copper for his complicity and scuttles off chuckling at the moon. Dawn, with empty hands. Morning comes pale and hoar-frosted. Lyra wakes, refreshed, straps on her cloak, and, feeling the pang of breakfast, opens the satchel. But nothing stirs inside. No shimmer, no faint kitchen aroma, only the inert smell of tanned leather. She blinks, whispers, "Supper time." Silence. She repeats, louder. Still the bag sits, stubborn and empty. Realization sweeps over her, like snowmelt. The satchel has been switched. Anger gutters. Shock hardens to cold reason. She marches downstairs. Magnus, busy calculating room fees, greets her with that rehearsed smile. "I'd stay for porridge, but time presses," she says through gritted teeth. Yet first, a single question. Did any soul step across the second-floor landing last night? Magnus taps his ledger thoughtfully. No one, to my knowledge. I myself bolted the taproom at the 11th stroke. His face is an unreadable mask, but in the bead of sweat at his temple, Lyra glimpses truth. She arranges her features into a polite nod, pays for the lodging, and tucks the counterfeit bag beneath her cloak. Then she steps into crisp daylight, mind racing. She recalls elder sister Selene's calm advice. When you learn you've been robbed, watch, wait, and gather proof. Thieves trap themselves in their own want. Lyra resolves, therefore, not to storm back inside, but to press on toward Frost-Glen, warn her family, and devise a way to reclaim the satchel with cunning rather than fury. Behind her, the lanterns of Magnus graves sway innocently in the breeze, crimson linen fluttering like drops of blood on snow. She turns north, jaw set, heart wounded yet unbroken. The road grinds uphill, but each step beats with promise that wrongs will be righted. Ahead, somewhere beyond these wind-bitten hills, her sisters tread their own perilous paths, and the destiny of all three will soon converge. Thus ends Chapter 3, a house of warmth that harbored cold intent, a priceless treasure stolen under. Watch of moonlight, and a young woman's vow to bring justice not with sword or shout, but with wit, patience, and an unquenchable spark of hope. Chapter 4, Cora and the Silversong Lute. Follow now the middle frost sister, Cora, whose spirit is equal parts melody and mischief. Where Lyra's red cloak flashed like a spark, Cora prefers forest green wool trimmed with silver piping, the better to match the reed pipe always slung at her hip. She leaves Frost-Glen by the river road at first thaw, when ice floes drift like shattered mirrors and the water beneath runs fast and cold. A journey by water. For 5 dawns Cora keeps pace with the torrent, sleeping beneath willow roots and barter busking at ferry landings, a jig for a heel of bread, a lullaby for a passenger's seat. By the 6th morning, the land flattens into misty wetlands. Her breath tastes of loam and cattails. There, where 3 tributaries braid together, rises the river city of Elaway, a labyrinth of stilted houses, rope bridges, and music that seems to seep from every plank. Fishermen whistle as they gut silver perch. Children wrap tin buckets. To imitate drum corps, cathedral bells argue in 3 different keys. Cora feels instantly at home. Master Terran's workshop. She finds apprenticeship beneath a swinging sign carved with a lyre over crossed chisels. Terran and daughters, makers and menders of fine instruments. Master Alaric Terran is older than River, silt, spider-thin, hair a cloud of white, hearing nearly gone save for perfect pitch. He tests Cora not with questions, but by handing her a cracked mandolin. She examines grain, humidity warping, and the fault line of the spruce top. She proposes a splint of willow, hide glue warmed exactly to the touch of the inner wrist. Terrans, Eyebrows rise. He motions her inside. Tools hang where they belong, he rasps. Hands tell the truth, mouths follow later. So begins a year of music and labor. Cora refrets citerns, carves replacement bridges, polishes hornpipes until they gleam like moonlight on water. Each evening she practices scales on anything not claimed by a customer, harp zither, bowed psaltery, even a glass harmonica whose tones shimmer like winter air. Alloway's nightlife welcomes her. She joins dockside jamborees, trades harmony for gossip, learned songs older than the city's oldest piling, the winter of craft. One brittle night in midwinter, Master Terran calls Cora to the shop's attic, a room lit by lanterns shaded with parchment stenciled in musical notation. He speaks more words in that hour than she has heard all year. You tune wood, child, but do you tune silence? Listen. He plucks 4 notes on an unstrung frame. No string, only wood vibrating, a harmonic she feels in her ribs. Music lives where nothing is. He sets her a final task. Design an instrument no eye has seen, no ear yet dreamed. Weeks blur into curled shavings on the floor. Cora sketches, discards, begins again. At last, from drift birch and river reed, she shapes a miniature lute. Body, no broader than a dinner plate. Neck slender as a cattail, sound hole carved in a spiral of interlocking moons. She strings it with silver spun gut fine as cobweb. When she lifts the pick, even the shop cat freezes, ears tilting to catch the newborn voice. A gentle, glassy timbre, like morning light striking frost. Gift of the moon strings. On the eve of spring equinox, Terran summons her to the river wharf. Moonlight ladders across black water. He presents the lute back to her, now cased in ashwood, each fret inlaid with mother-of-pearl stars. This is the Silversong lute, he declares. Speak, silver chime, and coins will fall in proportion to the generosity of your song. Hoard its gift and the strings will snap. Share it freely and they will sing forever. He closes her fingers around the neck. Alloway gave me life. You gave it new music. Take this and repay the world however you see fit. Cora tries the command. Silver chime. The lute's sound hole glows faintly. A handful of silver discs, minted with distant kings' profiles, tumbles into her palm, ringing like tiny bells. She laughs, startled, half-dazzled, pocketing only 1 coin and tipping the rest into the river for luck. Farewell under lanterns. Cora departs at dawn, Alloway's musicians escorting her with pipes and timbrels along the quay. Taryn watches from his doorway, tapping silent time. As the city slips behind a curtain of reeds, Cora feels the weight of both fortune and responsibility resting across her back in that ashwood case. The Red Lantern's second performance. Snow flurries swirl again when Cora climbs the rise to the familiar coaching house. The lanterns still burn crimson. The sign still creaks on rusty chains. Inside, Magnus Graves conducts evening trade with unctuous ease. Cora pays for a bed, orders only cider, and takes a corner stool. Soon curiosity draws fiddlers, traders, and the ever-nosy stable-hand Rennick into a semicircle around her. She unlatches the case, lifts the lute. The crowd hushes. Cora plays a river ballad that begins gentle as drifting petals and ends in a reel that sends boots stamping. When the final chord fades, she whispers, "Silver chime." Silver rain clinks onto an upturned tavern platter. Cheers explode. Rennick whoops. Magnus's smile tightens behind the bar like a noose. Cora, flush with delight, insists the coins be used to pay everyone's supper. She retires upstairs, unaware that the innkeeper's envy has kindled into full flame. Midnight substitution. Deep night. Footsteps pad along the corridor. Magnus unlatches her door with the same stolen key he used on Lyra. The Silversong lute lies in its case beside the washstand. He replaces it with a children's toy lute, painted bright, strings of cheap wire, and retreats. Rennick spirits. The real instrument to the same barley sack hiding place. Homecoming and humiliation. Days later, Cora crests Frost-Glen's ridge, heart hammering with anticipation. She gathers neighbors, promising a tune to refill every pantry in the valley. Selene, returned from her own distant study, stands beside their mother. Lyra, weary-eyed, clutches a satchel that will not answer her words. Cora does not yet notice her sister's quiet warning. She strums the toy lute. The tinny clang sounds like rain on scrap iron. "Silver chime!" she cries once, twice. Nothing falls but silence. Confusion ripples into laughter. Laughter stings into shame. Only then does Cora meet Lyra's gaze and understand. The same thief has struck them both. Resolve forged in harmony. That night, the sisters share their stories by firelight. Loss knots with anger. Anger tempers into resolve. They draft letters to Selene, whose calm wisdom might yet tip the scales. Cora swears an oath upon the empty lute case. Not one more traveler shall be robbed by those red lanterns. And in her heart a new melody forms, minor, fierce, and unbroken. waiting for the moment it will ring out in justice. Thus closes Chapter 4, a journey of music, craft, and generosity twisted by envy, but also the tightening braid of sisterhood, drawing three separate melodies toward a single triumphant chord yet to be played. Chapter 5, Coins at Midnight. Dusk settles over the frontier like ink poured across parchment when Cora Frost, lute case snug beneath her arm, reaches the ridge that overlooks the coaching house called the Red Lantern Inn. From this height, the building is a lone ember amid blank windswept heath. 30 red paper lanterns sway on iron hooks, each one a small pulsing heart against the dark. Horses stamp in the yard, breath rising like ghosts, while weary drivers stagger toward the promise of ale and fire. Cora's boots crunch the gravel drive. She feels the familiar thrill of a new audience waiting on the other side of a tavern door. Yet tonight carries an edge of urgency. With the Silversong lute strapped to her back, she can test its magic at last, and she hopes, earn coin enough to replace every empty grain sack in Frost-Glen, a song for strangers. Inside, the tap room buzzes, dice slap tabletops, a fiddle saws rough jigs, and peat smoke drifts from a hearth big enough to roast a stag. The innkeeper, Magnus Graves, spots Cora at once. His thin smile flickers beneath an oil lamplight sheen. She pays for a corner stool, orders only mulled cider, and rests her ashwood case across her knees. When the fiddle player breaks a string, the crowd's energy sags. Cora takes her cue. She unlatches the case and lifts the lute. Its body gleams pale silver, frets twinkling like distant constellations. Conversations hush. She begins with a river lullaby, soft, lilting, the kind that rocks fishing skiffs to sleep, then slides into a brisk reel that sets tankards tapping. Notes spill like water over stones. Sailors' shoulders loosen. A merchant with ink-stained fingers wipes a tear he claims is smoke. As the final chord hangs trembling, Cora lowers her voice to a whisper only the instrument can hear. Silver chime. The lute's sound hole glows pearl white. A cascade of silver coins rains onto an empty serving platter with the bright ring of small bells. Gasps erupt, chairs scrape, someone laughs in pure disbelief. Cora sweeps a courteous bow and proclaims, "Tonight's supper is on the river. Magnus's practiced smile never falters, yet envy sharpens his pupils to pinpoints. While patrons jostle forward, he scoops the coins into a ledger box, promises extra bread, and presses a complimentary key into Cora's hand. The best room, Mistress Minstrel, on the house, he murmurs. She, flushed with triumph, misses the tremor in his voice. Plotting by firelight. Mid-evening finds Magnus alone in his office, the silver platter glinting atop his desk. He turns one coin between thumb and forefinger, mesmerized. A single word and wealth pours forth. Visions bloom. Caravans lined up outside his door, nobles paying a king's ransom just to witness the miracle. Greed blows like bellows on a buy. Forge, shaping a plan as cold as the steel safe beneath his floorboards. He summons his stable hand, Rennick, a lantern-jawed youth with more debts than scruples. Fetch the toy Lute from the pawn crate, Magnus whispers, sliding 3 fresh silvers across the desk. Wait till the witch is dead asleep. Rennick's nod is crisp as snapped kindling, the silver hour. Wind claws at shutters while the in-top clock strikes midnight. The hour sailors call the silver hour, when luck drifts loose from mortal anchors. Cora lies dreaming of home, unaware that her room's lock turns with a conspirator's patience. Candle in hand, Magnus steps inside. He sets the guttering flame on the washstand. Its light throws long, trembling shadows across beams and quilts. The Silversong lute rests beside Cora's pack. Magnus lifts it. You might imagine the hush of a fox stealing a goose egg, then eases it into a cloth sack. Rennick produces the decoy, a gaudy children's toy, painted turquoise, strings of tin that plink if breathed upon. They swap cases, clasp the latch, and retreat. The door clicks shut. Only candle smoke lingers. Down in the root cellar, Magnus buries the true lute under burlap barley sacks, patting grain flat like fresh earth on a grave. He pockets 1 silver coin, talisman of his new fortune, and finally allows his grin to split wide. A chilled departure. Morning breaks glassy blue. Cora wakes eager to gift the village another miracle before she presses north. She cradles the lute, feels its familiar curve, and in the silent language between musician and instrument she expects a greeting. Instead, she senses nothing. Like a bird carved from soapstone. Frowning, she strums. The toy strings squawk discordant. Bewildered, she tries again. Clang. Her pulse stutters. She whispers the command. Silver chime. Nothing falls. Only her heart. Magnus, polishing mugs below, hears the sour clatter and smiles into the brass. Cora descends the stair in a storm of confusion. Master Graves? She asks, voice steady by force of will. Was my chamber touched? Last night? No one crosses my threshold after the 11th bell, he replies, laying a hand against his chest. Safe as church vaults, this house. His sincerity is flawless, yet behind him, Rennick's grin slips for a half-second. Cora catches the flicker, and she knows. But knowledge without proof is fog. It chills, not cuts. She swallows anger, thanks the innkeeper for his hospitality, and steps into wind that smells of iron and distance. Frost-Glen in shadow. Days later, the familiar peaks loom. Frost-Glen, home, hearth, hope. The village gathers at Marta's door to greet the traveling minstrel. Cora unveils the decoy lute, swears it spun silver in Ellaway, and, before she can doubt herself, plucks a ringing C major. The strings rasp like rusted hinges. "Silver chime," she calls. Not a single coin gleams, only brittle silence spreads. Laughter stings. A dog barks at the discord. Marta steps forward, wraps an arm around her daughter, sensing shame coil. Around Cora's ribs tighter than any girdle. Lyra, standing nearby with her lifeless satchel, recognizes the hollow fury in her sister's eyes, and recognizes, too, the name of the thief that must lie at the root of both disasters. Magnus Graves. That night, after villagers drift away muttering theories about trick strings and stage fakery, the sisters sit beside the kitchen stove. Lamplight paints twin crescents in their eyes. Lyra tells her tale first. The ever-full satchel that answered no command after one night beneath red lanterns. Cora follows with her account of coin rain and midnight betrayal. They speak until the candle gutters. At last, Cora reaches into the inner lining of the toy lute. Hidden there, wedged by Rennick in haste, is a scrap of barley chaff still smelling, faintly of ale cellar. Evidence, proof enough. They seal a letter and dispatch it south by courier pigeon to their elder sister Selene, whose calm intellect and longer reach might yet be the lever that topples a greedy innkeeper. When the bird launches skyward, its wings beat a promise. The Frost sisters will not suffer thieves. They will answer deceit not with despair, but with strategy. Cora closes her eyes. Somewhere under red lanterns, her Silversong lute lies buried in grain, waiting. She pictures silver coins arcing through candle glow, notes rising like river mist, and she vows they shall rise again, ringing justice across every beam of that tarnished inn. Thus concludes Coins at Midnight, a chapter of music twisted into silence, of generosity answered by greed, and of two wronged sisters forging the resolve that will soon summon their star-reading sibling. and the reckoning she will carry in a velvet-lined box. Chapter 6. Selene and the Stardust Rod. High above the surf-torn coast, halfway between cloud and cliff, rises the white stone citadel of Solera Point Observatory, a crown of glass domes whose brass frameworks catch dawn like polished horns. It is here that Selene Frost, eldest of the Frost sisters, has spent the past year beneath whirling astrolabes and the patient tutelage of master astrographer Orion Vale, the watcher of constellations. Imagine Selene on her first night in Solera. Point. Hair braided tight against the sea wind, parchment map trembling in one hand, telescope tripod slung across her shoulder like a soldier's pike. Within hours of arrival, she is climbing spiral staircases that smell of salt and lamp oil, measuring star azimuths against the creak of turning gears. Her task is humble: polish lenses, record meteor streaks, wind the massive clockwork that rotates the dome. But every duty is communion with the heavens she adores. Her mentor, Orion Vale, is a stooped scholar with eyes that seem to have traded earthly focus for celestial reach. Words are sparse. Approval is rarer still. Yet, night after night, Selene earns it, noting subtle color shifts in Betelgeuse's pulse, sketching new nebular wisps in the southern crown, predicting a minor eclipse to the very minute. When storms blot the sky, she charts the invisible, drawing imaginary paths across blank sheets because her mind refuses to be clouded. Between observations, she learns the way of quiet motion, an old observatory discipline that marries breath control with fine gear maintenance. The idea is simple: a steady hand in windless calm is easy. A steady hand while gale gusts through broken shutters is mastery. Selene practices until she can balance a glass sphere on the back of her turning palm while the tower rocks under squall. The year ripens. Spring azaleas cling to crags. Summer fogs roll in thick as fleece. Autumn scatters gulls like scraps of parchment. All the while, letters from Frost-Glen arrive seldom. From Marta, terse and loving. From Lyra and Cora, enthusiastic at first, then quieter, then darkly vague. Selene feels tension in those silences, like pressure within an unsounded drum. But duty binds her to finish her apprenticeship before she can investigate. A master's final lesson. On the night of the perihelion vigil, a once-a-decade alignment of 5 wandering stars, Orion Vale summons Selene to the topmost dome. Silver lanterns float in mirrored trays of water, doubling their light upward like twin moons. The telescope stands unattended. Instead, A long cedar table bears a single velvet box, its lid stitched with glyphs in gold thread. "Tonight," the master intones, "you have nothing to measure except intent." He gestures for Selene to open the box. Inside lies a polished ebony rod, the span of her forearm, capped with a quartz finial that traps motes of starlight even in shadow. Along its length, tiny copper gears nestle in channels like constellations stored under glass. The sight lances awe through her chest. "There are forces," Vale continues, "older than math and brighter than molten iron. We name them only in metaphor. Courage, justice, the will that bends wickedness to account. This instrument is tuned to those forces. Speak the words, and it obeys the bearer whose cause is righteous." He instructs her. The command, "Starfall, arise," summons the rod into motion, a whirlwind of dazzling, painless meteoric light that strikes with force, enough to cow giants yet never spill blood. When the need is met, Starfall returns it to stillness. Selene lifts the rod. Warmth thrums through her palm like distant thunder. She thinks of ink-thin letters from home, of sisters who laugh against hardship, of an empty space in those letters shaped exactly like stolen trust. Resolve hardens. Orion Vale studies her in silence, then nods once, the gesture of a craftsman acknowledging that the last chisel mark is true. "Your apprenticeship ends," he says. "Where you carry this light is now your choosing." Preparation for departure. The following dawn, a dawn so clear the ocean horizon looks cut with a razor, Selene packs lightly. 2 journals, silver calipers, her father's field glass, and the velvet box. She leaves behind every comfort the observatory offered. Warm bunk, steady rations, the nightly corral of gulls, because something colder than sea wind is dragging at the threads of her family's fate. Before she descends the cliff path, Master Vale gifts one final tool, a star map scarab, wrought of bronze, hinged wings etched with the night sky on the hour of her birth. Press the wings and the scarab points, compass-like, toward the location where cosmic tension in her life story peaks highest. Destiny is not a leash, he cautions. It is a lantern showing where shadows gather thickest. Selene presses the wings. The scarab's delicate legs pivot. Its tiny head aligns unerringly northeast, toward lands beneath snow and hunger, toward a coaching house lighted by red lanterns. A shiver, both fear and relief, courses through her. Across the salt road. She sets out along the salt road, a trade route hugging cliffs then turning inland through chalk valleys. Storm gulls wheel overhead. Pilgrims in saffron cloaks share fires, trading myths of sky serpents and sand kings. Each night Selene finds a clearing, unwraps the rod, and practices silent drills. Starfall, arise. The rod whirls in orbit, sparks sketching bright helixes. Starfall, rest. The light knits back into ebony, quiet as moonset. She times herself, seeking perfect cadence from breath to word to motion. She learns to send the rod darting around obstacles, snaking through pine trunks, looping back to her hand without singeing bark or grass. She bows to an invisible opponent, accepting that when the rod strikes, it strikes not in anger, but in correction. On the 11th night, as she camps beneath skeletal birches, a courier pigeon flutters into her cook smoke. The note tied to its leg bears her sister's intertwined hand strokes. 3 sentences. Our wonders stolen. Thief hides under red lanterns. Come swiftly. No mention of tears or despair. Only facts, like constellations placed in urgent sequence. Selene's blood drums. She packs camp in 7 minutes, resumes the march at a pace that names each mile with purpose. Twilight at the highway fork. Late winter dusk, 2 weeks since leaving Solera Point. Selene crests a rise where the salt road meets the great highway. Below, exactly as described in caravan tales, glows the Red Lantern Inn, lanterns bobbing crimson, windows golden, trust shining on every traveler's face. Snow dusts the shingles, coach wheels cut muddy crescents in frozen ruts. From her ridge vantage, the place looks almost welcoming. She presses the scarab. Its head spins, fixes on the building like a hound scenting prey. Shadows indeed gather there. Selene kneels, loosens her cloak, and opens the velvet box. The rod rests within, serene as moonlight on obsidian. She doesn't speak the words. She only lays her fingers along its length, feeling the stored pulse, like distant drums, signaling that drums will soon be unnecessary. She rises, squares her shoulders, and starts down the slope. Her boots leave comet-shaped prints in the thin snow, each step bright with the promise that star-forged justice travels at her side. Thus ends Chapter 6, a chronicle of discipline beneath cosmic vaults, of a gift forged from light and responsibility, and of an older sister answering the silent call of her family's need. Ahead waits candle-soot deceit, a cellar stacked with stolen marvels, and a thief who has never felt the weight of a star crashing gently, but irresistibly, against his conscience. Chapter 7. Moonlit Justice. The last pale coin of daylight slips behind the pines as I, your unseen narrator, follow Selene Frost down the frozen slope toward the Red Lantern Inn. Overhead the moon stands full, so bright the snow seems lit from below. Yet the inn's dangling crimson lamps still cast a feverish glow, as though warning beacons for the greedy soul who keeps them trimmed. Selene pauses at the road's bend, breath blooming in silver puffs. She studies the building the way an astronomer studies a star she means to chart, noting the pattern of shutter slats, the rhythm of stable hands crossing the yard, the flicker of Magnus Graves's silhouette behind a second-floor curtain. Then, she slips the velvet box from her satchel and lifts its lid. The Stardust rod rests within like a sliver of midnight, ebony shaft, quartz finial alive with quiet sparks. Selene's fingers close around it. Though she does not yet speak the words, a hush ripples through the brittle winter air, as if even the owls know something momentous stirs. The silent entrance. She strides to the yard archway, cloak brushed clean of snow, hood lowered to show steady eyes. Magnus, ever the practiced host, sweeps onto the porch with a bow deep enough to hide his surprise. "Madam Traveler, welcome. A bed and hot stew for a modest fee." "A bed, certainly," Selene replies, voice mild as star mist. "And room. Enough to stow a small case." She taps the velvet box. Magnus's gaze hooks on the gilded stitching. Greed, like an ember, flares behind his courteous smile. Inside, the tap room simmers with talk. Carters counting profits, card players slapping down creased queens. Yet when Selene settles at a lone table and orders nothing but boiled water, the buzz dips, as though patrons sense the trajectory of some invisible comet altering their sky. Upstairs, Magnus personally unlocks a gabled room. "Safe as church coffers," he promises. Selene thanks him, sets the velvet box on the quilt, and shuts the door. The bolt slides, footsteps retreat, but she does not sleep. Instead, she opens the skylight, letting moonlight spill across the floorboards like liquid milk. She kneels, aligns the scarab compass on a beam of light, and waits. It pivots toward the cellar beneath the east wing, precisely where her sisters reported their treasures vanished. A smile, thin, determined, curves her lips. The thief at work. Midnight approaches, that liminal cusp when day's masks slip. In the corridor, Magnus pads soft-footed, skeleton key glinting. He has dismissed Rennick tonight, preferring to Claim this fresh prize alone. He eases Selene's latch, candle flame cupped to dull its glow. There on the washstand rests the velvet box, lid cracked open, rod gleaming temptingly. Magnus licks his lips, steps forward. Starfall, arise. The words, spoken behind him, are barely louder than a breath. Yet the room detonates with brilliance. The stardust rod shoots upward, spinning. A halo of meteoric sparks whirls round Magnus's head. He yelps, stumbling back, candle extinguished in a gust. Light cords of shimmering blue lash the door shut behind him. In the swirl, Selene seems statue still, eyes reflecting starlight. Touch nothing that is not yours, she says. Her voice is neither shout nor whisper. It is the calm of deep space, vast and inarguable. But Magnus is a gambler. Fear and avarice wrestle in his chest. He lunges, fingers outstretched toward the rod as though it were a gold bar. Selene raises a hand. The rod darts like lightning, wrapping his knuckles. Sparks flare harmlessly, but with the sting of ice. He howls. Again he tries. Again the rod strikes, now shoulder, now shin. Each blow precise, corrective, never cruel but utterly unavoidable. Confession under constellations. Within moments Magnus crumples to his knees, breath ragged. Selene whispers, starfall, slow, and the rod hovers, orbiting her like a tame comet awaiting the next command. I ask once, she says, kneeling so their gazes meet. Where is my family's satchel and lute? Magnus blusters, clutching. Sore joints, but the rod edges nearer, crackling like frost on a window pane. Sweat beads his brow despite the chill. In the grain cellar, he stammers. Under the barley sacks. Take them and leave me be. Selene studies him, a man pickled in his own guile, then nods. Stand, you will lead me there. She binds his wrist with the room's curtain cord. He offers no protest now, and guides him down service stairs lit only by moon shafts through cracked panes. At the cellar door she commands, Starfall, rest. The rod alights, in her palm, quiescent. Within, the smell of malt and dust greets them. She lifts the topmost burlap bag and there, dulled by chaff but unmistakable, lies the ever-full satchel. Beside it, the Silversong lute. Relief floods her, a rush like seeing dawn after a night-long storm. She makes Magnus shoulder both items. A reckoning before witnesses. Selene wakes the inn at the stroke of 1. Patrons tumble from bunks and benches, startled to see their host bound, led by a woman whose eyes gleam with remote constellations. They flood the yard, breaths clouding, boots crunching in frost. "Friends," Selene calls, her voice carrying crisp and bright. "You have eaten, drunk, and lodged under a roof bought with theft. These two wonders belong to my family, stolen, in this very house." Murmurs ripple. Some remember Lyra's miraculous meal, Cora's coin rain. Magnus tries protest, but Selene lifts the rod. Its tip glows, and he gulps silence. "I could let Starfall meet full judgment," she continues, "but justice tempered by mercy burns longest. Hear his confession yourselves." With a weary sigh and many stumbles, Magnus recounts every deceit. The swapped satchel, the toy lute, the buried treasures, the cowardice, gasps, curses, and a few shame-tinged apologies from patrons who had laughed at the sisters' failures punctuate the tale. Selene turns to the crowd. "Let him keep his life and the ruins of his reputation. He shall walk penniless from this. Place at dawn and never again hang a lantern in deceit. No dissent rises. Even Rennick, arriving late and ashen-faced, merely nods." Return of the Wonders. Selene loads the satchel over her shoulder, secures the lute across her back. Before leaving, she dips a hand into the satchel, murmurs, "Supper time." A loaf, steaming and fragrant, appears. She breaks it into pieces, handing portions to the stable hands and cook, folk whose livelihoods hinged on a thief's favor. She strums the lute, whispers silver chime, and lets a new shower of coins clatter onto the tavern tables. Repayment for their lodging debts, a seed of better fortunes. Then, beneath a moon so bright it needs no ally, she marches Magnus to the highway milestone. She cuts his bonds, keeps his keys, and points south. "Walk," she says. "Every lantern behind you fades tonight." And he walks, coat thin, pride thinner, into the frost-luminous dark. Selene returns to the inn-yard where travelers watch, in reverent hush. She bows once, an astronomer saluting a successfully plotted transit, then steps onto the north road, rod tapping rhythm against her thigh, treasures reclaimed and justice served. Snow begins to fall, fine as spilled stardust. Each flake catches lantern glow and moon glow together, turning the night into a slow-turning galaxy through which Selene Frost, eldest of three, journeys homeward, bearing hope in a satchel, prosperity in a lute, and the quiet, steadfast power of a star captured in ebony. Thus ends Chapter 7, Moonlit Justice, a tale of light wielded without bloodshed, of wrongs confessed beneath witness, and of an inn that once thrived on envy, now standing empty under the very lanterns that named it. Ahead lies reunion, feasting, and the weaving together of three hard-won miracles into a single tapestry of shared abundance for all of Frost-Glen. Chapter 8. The Sisters Reunited. The mountain pass leading to Frost-Glen is a corridor of wind-carved snowdrifts and blue-shadowed pines. Here, two figures climb in single file. At the lead strides Selene Frost, cloak snapped open by a tailwind, the Stardust rod hidden in its velvet sheath across her back. Behind her, the shaggy gelding Morrow plods patiently, carrying a heavy saddle bundle that clinks, the Silversong Lute, and bumps, the ever-full Satchel, with every step. Overhead, the late winter sky is a bowl of lacquered turquoise, bright enough to burn memory into the eye. Footsteps on the old bridge. At the lip of the final gorge stands the stone ribbon bridge, three arches spanning an ice-glazed river. Once, Selene and her sisters raced ponies across these flagstones. Now she crosses alone, staff clicking, breath curling like a comet's tail. Halfway across, she halts. Downstream, smoke spirals from cottage chimneys. Church bell notes drift faintly through crisp air. Frost-Glen is alive, hungry perhaps, but alive. She presses a palm to the bridge parapet in silent greeting, then urges, "Morrow onward." Hooves echo between cliffs, carrying wordless news into the valley ahead. Something long lost is coming home. The first embrace. At the village edge, past the frozen goat meadow, a girl in a russet cloak chops kindling. Lyra hears hoofbeats, looks up, drops her axe with a thunk. Her shout rings so loudly a rook bursts from the apple tree. "Selene!" She sprints, snow spraying. Selene dismounts with one fluid swing, and they collide in a hug that drives the breath from both. For a heartbeat, there are no rescued treasures, no bitter memories, only the fierce relief of blood recognizing blood. Lyra speaks first, voice thick. "Did you find—" Selena answers by tugging at the saddle cover. The ever-full Satchel tumbles into her sister's arms. Lyra gasps, clutches it like a child retaken from a flood. Music in the doorway. Word travels faster than wood smoke. By the time the pair reach the crooked stone house, Cora is on the threshold, cheeks flushed from fanning Marta's kiln. She sees the ashwood lute case on Selene's back, and a single chord escapes her lips. Half laugh, half sob. Selene bows like a minstrel before a queen and presents the case. Cora's fingers tremble as she unlatches it. Silver-spun strings, pearl frets, and a faint sigh of resonance as though the instrument recognizes its maker's apprentice. Cora plucks a test note, G major, clear as thawing ice. The sound flashes down the village lane. Shutters crack open. A kitten tilts its head. Marta's kitchen fire. Inside, Marta wipes flour from her wrists and stares, stunned, at the three daughters arrayed before her. Lyra hugging a satchel, Cora cradling a lute, Selene standing tall with a velvet box. No speeches. Instead, Marta steps forward and takes Selene's face in her clay-rough hands. "You look tired," she murmurs. Selene smiles. The oldest Frost tradition, scolding before celebration. They move to the hearth. Selene unpacks everything. The satchel, the lute, and finally the box. The Stardust rod emerges, its quartz finial catching firelight and scattering it across ceiling beams in little constellations. Marta's eyes widen. She murmurs a prayer of thanks to ancestors who watch from mountain shadows. Stories woven like braid. As evening deepens, the sisters trade tales while Marta kneads new dough. Lyra describes Magnus's first theft, the swapped satchel, and the empty humiliation. Cora recounts coins that never fell, and laughter that cut deeper than frost. Selene tells of moon-bright justice, rod whirling, thief confessing, wonder reclaimed. Marta listens, hands steady in the bowl, and nods at the end. Adversity, she says, is just the kiln we fire our courage in. She sprinkles flour, like stardust, then orders them to wash for supper. Proof before the village. At dawn, Marta rings the old porringer bell, a signal unused since the last midsummer fair. Curious neighbors drift toward the Frost cottage, shepherds in wool coats, miller's twins with pitchforks for balance, Aldrich the baker wiping sleep from his beard. On a trestle table before the door, Lyra lays the ever-full satchel. She meets the people's wary eyes. Some remember her failed display, then lifts the flap and whispers, "Supper time." A fragrance blooms, venison stew, rosemary biscuits, quince jam whose color rivals sunrise. Platters stack themselves, steam curling like banners. Gasps rise, then cheering. Cora steps forward, positions the Silversong lute against her heart. One arpeggio of river light notes, then the command, "Silver chime." The sound port gleams. Coins spill onto a homespun cloth, enough small silver to clear winter debts. Finally, Selene, calm as dawn, sets the rod upright. She speaks softly. Starfall, arise. Sparks whirl upward, weaving a lattice of safe, harmless light above the crowd. Aurora colors laced with comet trails. Children shriek delight. Elders remove caps in wonder. When she ends the display with Starfall rest, the sparks fold inward and vanish like seeds hidden in soil. Justice, mercy, and practical plans. With proof delivered, the sisters address the assembly. Selene recounts Magnus's confession, emphasizing that the rod's blows left bruises, not broken bones. The man walked south stripped of ill-gotten gains, but alive to ponder his choices. Marta speaks next. We have wonders. Yes, but wonders unused grow sour. She proposes 3 deeds. A communal pantry. The ever-full satchel to supply daily soup for those whose stores run low. A free scholars fund. Cora's coin rain to buy ink, slate, and winter boots so every child can attend lesson days. A watcher's lantern. Each month, Selene will let the rod light the night sky, reminding the valley that justice watches as surely as the stars. The villagers murmur approval. Aldrich chokes up, promises free rye loaves twice a week. Song over snowfields. That night, after crowds disperse, the sisters hike to the ridge above the house. Frost crystals catch moonlight around them. Cora carries the lute, Lyra, a lantern, Selene, the rod. They sit on a fallen spruce and share silence, the profound, satisfied kind that only siblings know. Then Cora begins a melody, slow, minor key, weaving sorrow into gratitude. Lyra hums harmony. Selene lifts the rod, gentle sparks drift upward, like fireflies migrating to the constellations. 3 voices rise, unrehearsed but perfectly matched. Home is the hand that mends us, fire on a winter's night. Love is the road that bends us, circling back to the first starlight. The music floats across the valley. In distant cottages, candles are snuffed. People fall asleep smiling without quite knowing why. Dreams kindled. As embers in Marta's stove ebbed to crimson, she writes in her pottery ledger, kiln to be rebuilt by spring, glazes to bear colors of star sparks. She sets quill aside, imagines shelves filled with bowls trimmed in silver and crimson and midnight blue. The story of her family fired into clay. Upstairs, the sisters dream. Lyra of a workshop where enchanted satchels feed pilgrim roads. Cora of an amphitheater on the riverbank. strings ringing under aurora curtains. Selene of a teaching dome in Frost-Glen where children chart stars with berry ink quills. Outside, frost laces every branch. Yet from the frost cottage lamplight spills steady and golden, rising into the night like a promise kept. Thus concludes Chapter 8, The Sisters Reunited, a chapter of return, of wrongs set right beneath watchful peaks, and of three threads, of wonder braided into one unbreakable cord of family and community. Beyond this night waits a feast for every soul in the valley, a treasury of song, and a sky forever changed by the glint of justice carried home. Chapter 9, A Feast of Light and Song. Dawn arrives on a hush of rose-gold snow clouds, and Frost-Glen wakes to a soft astonishment. Every chimney exhales the scent of cinnamon and rosemary. Every window flickers with candle stubs gifted overnight from the ever-full Satchel. This, dear listener, is the day the valley has decided, collectively, irreversibly, to celebrate its own rebirth. The Great Preparation. Long before sun rays spill over the eastern ridge, Lyra is already in the lane with a notebook and the goat birch trotting at her heels. She assigns tasks the way a carpenter fits dovetails. Alderic the baker rolls out dough under tarpaulin awnings, shaping loaves as wide as cartwheels. The miller's twins lug cider barrels to the square, corks creaking like door hinges of opportunity. Mrs. Greenrow, who swears she once danced for a duke, strings bunting between linden trees, strips of cloth dyed crimson, silver, and midnight blue to honor Satchel, Lute, and Rod. Inside the crooked stone house, Cora clears the largest table and tunes the Silversong lute. Each plucked harmonic sends tiny ripples through the air, almost inaudible, but strong enough to rattle empty mugs in anticipation. Selene, calm at the heart of the bustle, walks the perimeter with her scarab compass. She marks safe circles in the snow where the Stardust rod will flare after nightfall, far enough from haystacks, close enough for children to feel starlight on their cheeks. Marta oversees everything from the threshold, sleeves dusted in flour. Her eyes shine, not with fatigue, though she has kneaded since midnight, but with a potter's quiet joy at seeing raw clay turn to vessel. Opening the satchel. At high noon, a hush settles over the square. Villagers crowd shoulder to shoulder, shepherds wool-coated, quarrymen chalk-smudged, toddlers hoisted onto fences for a better view. A rough pine platform has been hammered together, and upon it Lyra sets the ever-full satchel. She steadies her, Breath meets 100 expectant faces, then whispers, "Supper time." The satchel swells like a living bellows. 1 heartbeat, 2, and lids fly open on 8 steaming cauldrons that were not there a moment ago. Honey-roasted hare with juniper berries. Carrot ginger soup glowing amber. Sun-dried tomato barley flecked. With basil-trout baked in cedar leaves, the lake's own signature. Platters, spoons, linens, and sweeting jars appear as naturally as mushrooms after rain. A collective sigh breaks, then laughter. Bowls are filled, passed hand to hand. Hunger, a familiar tenant here, packs its bags and leaves without so much as a wave. Lyra lifts the satchel again, lighter now, ready for its next miracle, and bows, hair tumbling across her brow. Applause crashes like surf in a canyon. The lute's gift. When the first hunger is smoothed away, Cora steps onto the platform, Silversong lute tucked beneath her chin. She begins with a single sleek note that climbs the winter air like a skylark after dawn. Then come chords, lush, river-wide, and finally a reel that dares the most arthritic knees to dance. Mid-song she murmurs, "Silver chime." The sound hole. Blossoms with pearly light, and a waterfall of coins cascades onto a stretched sailcloth at the foot of the stage. Children squeal, elders blink as though lightning struck gold. But Cora calls for baskets, not pockets. One by one, villagers drop shares of coin into woven bins labeled school roof, herbalist stock, Widow Callan's winter coal. The act is half reverence, half revolution. Wealth, once a rumor here, is now a tool passed around like a trusted hammer. The afternoon respite. As shadows lengthen, the square becomes a living tapestry. A chickpea stew stall vies in aroma with alder-smoked venison skewers. A circle of teenagers teaches younger cousins the real Cora played. Lyra directs a crew constructing a temporary pantry, pine boards, iron nails, and the promise of the satchel's daily bounty. Beyond the bustle, Marta throws open her rebuilt kiln. Brand new bowls and mugs, glazed in star-speckled cobalt, await first use. She gifts them freely. Each vessel finds a hand that will cherish it. Up on Windward Ridge, Selene watches clouds bruise into violet. She unpacks the Stardust rod, touches its quartz tip to the snow, and whispers a timing canticle Orion Vale once taught her. When the first owl calls, the stars are ready. The night of light, twilight pools blue in every hollow. Alder lanterns sputter to life, but their glow pales as Selene strides onto the now-cleared platform. In the hush she raises the rod skyward. Starfall, arise. silence shatters into splendor. Sparks whirl upward, braid into ribbons, then unfurl across the sky in sweeping arcs. Emerald, rose, silver, and gold. They move softly, soundlessly, yet every heart beats louder for them. Constellations never charted wink into being. A satchel-shaped cluster, a tiny lute, the silhouette of a rod-piercing darkness. Selene guides the storm like a conductor, a spiral above the chapel spire, a comet's curtain down Main Street, a finale of star dandelions bursting into shimmering seeds that drift but never scorch. Snow crystals catch stray motes, glinting until every rooftop seems frosted with liquid moon. When at last she speaks, "Starfall, rest," the sparks fold inward, drawing night's velvet cloak properly across the valley. All lingers like warmth from banked coals. Midnight harmony. Cora retunes quickly, hands sure despite the cold, and strikes a soft arpeggio. Soon other musicians join, fiddles, reed pipes, even Alderic on a bread paddle improvised as drum. Lyra, laughing, invents verses about soup that appears faster than gossip. Marta sways beside Shepherd Kayla, two widows sharing memories in 3/4 time. Couples old and new spin between snowdrifts. Children chase after spark after images, stamping their own constellations. At the stroke of midnight, the music eases into hush. Selene lifts her voice, not a trained singer's voice, but clear, steady, north wind pure. Under starlight, promised, mended, hunger's end and sorrow ended. Hand in hand we shape the dawn. Lyra and Cora join, their harmonies braiding. Like willow withies, the lyric loops until everyone knows it. 80 voices rise, a living chord anchoring hope to frost-bitten earth. Seeds for tomorrow. Before the crowd disperses, Marta addresses them by the dying embers of the bonfire. She announces, a rotating satchel keeper so responsibility for the wonder is shared, a village council to steward Lute coins toward roads, medicines, and apprenticeships. Quarterly Night of Light demonstrations, teaching neighboring hamlets that justice and generosity walk together. No one argues. How could they, cheeks still warm with soup and starlight? Votes are given by raised mittened hands, and a new charter is born. Closing quiet. In the thin hour before dawn, the square empties. Echoes fade. The sisters stand alone amid snow-littered benches. Lyra taps the satchel, already lighter than evening, but ready to refill with sunrise. Cora slips her fingers across the lute strings one last time. A single lullaby note glows in the air and then is gone. Selene sheathes the Stardust rod, its quartz tip dim but content. They link arms, boots crunching toward home. Above them, the sky they painted returns to its natural canvas. Yet, if you know where to look, you can still trace faint outlines of those new constellations. Satchel, Lute, rod, and 3 interlaced stars. Thus ends Chapter 9, a feast of light and song. A night when empty bowls became heirlooms, when coins rang not for greed but for possibility, and when the very heavens bent close enough for a humble valley to taste stardust on its tongue. Tomorrow will bring chores, questions, perhaps fresh trials, yet Frost-Glen will meet them fed, funded, and brilliantly, irrevocably lit from within. Chapter 10. Frost-Glen's New Dawn. The winter that once gnawed at Frost-Glen's bones has melted into a cool, silver-washed spring, and morning arrives now with lilac on the wind. The village no longer stirs from sleep out of hunger. It wakes from habit, because the forge needs stoking, the goats need greeting, and hope, like any living thing, must be watered daily. Listen. Roosters crow beneath eaves mended with coin from Cora's lute, and chimney pots puff gentle spirals that smell of cumin, cedar, and fresh bread. A new rhythm keeps time in these hills, and its name is renewal. Marta's Kiln of Constellations. At the eastern edge of town, the refurbished kiln stands taller than a man, its bricks mortared with quartz sand that glitters under sunrise. Marta kneels beside it, sliding a paddle stacked with bowls whose rims swirl deep indigo, spattered by white flecks, tiny galaxies captured in clay. She calls the line Starlight Crockery, and merchants from 3 valleys already place orders, eager to own a glimpse of the night that once danced above Frost-Glen. Yet the first set is not for sale. It will serve children's breakfasts in the communal pantry, so every youngster grows accustomed to eating from the sky. Lyra's ever-full pantry. Behind the stone house, Lyra supervises a timber outbuilding whose sign, burned into oak, reads, Hearth of Plenty. Inside, shelves of cedar bowls wait beside cauldrons warmed by geothermal vents channeled from the mountainside, an invention Lyra rigged with copper piping and unrelenting curiosity. Each dawn she unbuckles the ever-full satchel, breathes supper time, and ingredients spill forth in polite order: barley, winter greens, smoked trout, nutmeg. Volunteers stir, taste, season, school bells ring, children line up with mugs engraved by Marta's apprentice. No coin changes hands. The only cost is a whispered promise to return the kindness someday. Cora's River Conservatory. Just beyond the footbridge, an open-air amphitheater has risen where reeds once swayed alone. Its benches curve like the crescent moon, hewn from drift birch, and a cedar plank stage floats a handspan above the water, anchored by pilings charred to resist rot. This is Silversong Conservatory, Cora's gift to the valley. Twice a week she teaches. Scales echo against cliffs while pupils, miners, shepherd girls, aldermen struggle and laugh, fingers blistering into musicianship. Tuition is paid from lute coins. After every recital, Cora strums a final chord and murmurs, "Silver chime." The falling coins no longer shock the villagers. They celebrate them, catching the tiny moons in velvet bags marked Scholar Fund and River Dredge. A rumor has already sailed downstream. Frost-Glen may host the Midsummer Bardic Festival. For the first time in regional memory, the song will travel uphill. Selene's Observatory of the Commons. Where the old sheep pasture met the pine line, Selene and a team of carpenters erect a low-domed structure, half observatory, half schoolhouse. Its oculus frames the pole star. Its shutters glide on greased bronze casters fashioned by Lyra's designs. Children call it Star Nest. By day, slates and chalk teach arithmetic. By night, Selene hoists Orion Vale's field glass onto a tripod of yew and invites all comers to read the heavens. Once each month she stages the Night of Light. Villagers spread quilts on the grass. Visiting traders tie horses at the gate. Candles stay unlit because Selene lifts the Stardust rod and, on the whisper, "Starfall arise," spools out curtains of silent fire. Some swear the sparks carry a faint hum, a music only the hopeful can hear. When the rod rests, Selene recites the names of every child born that month, promising the sky will remember them. Governance by Lantern Law. Under Marta's porch eaves, a cedar notice board bears the freshly inked Charter of Frost. Glen, it lists 5 lantern laws, each carved on votive-shaped tablets. Share the satchel. No household may command the satchel twice before all neighbors have eaten. Direct the coins. Lute wealth belongs first to learning, healing, and road repair. Private enrichment comes only when the village balance is plentiful. Guard the light. The Stardust rod must never be wielded in anger, only in defense or celebration. Its custodian rotates each quarter moon. Remember the stranger. Every traveler receives bread and broth before business. Record the stars. Major decisions are held on starlit nights, so memory of the night of justice endures. Meetings under the lantern laws occur on the third full moon of the season. Villagers gather, candles perched in colored jars, to argue, tease, consent. It is said the debates are spirited, but never cruel. The rod rests across Selene's lap, silent, invisible guarantor of fair play. Trade winds and pilgrims. Word of endless soup and skyfire travels beyond the valley on merchant caravans sped by coin-greased axles. Soon pilgrims arrive, tinkers offering reef salt, scholars exchanging star charts, peddlers bearing apple saplings and news of far capitals. They find humble bunks in renovated haylofts, pay nothing more than a song shared at dusk or a story, traded by the hearth. Some leave gifts, a brass loom that weaves cloud-soft scarves, a wagon scale to weigh barley yields, a promised shipment of iron nails. Even Magnus Graves returns, not to reclaim stolen fame, but to beg work. His coat is threadbare, his lanterns long sold. The village council grants him probationary duty cleaning stable stalls, manual labor lit by the example of mercy. At evening meals he takes the last seat, head bowed, spoon steady. Nobody trusts him yet, but nobody leaves him hungry either. Harvest under new constellations. Summer ripens into gold. Wheat heads nod heavy. Bees hum through orchards coaxed from coin fund seedlings. Selene's new constellations, Satchel, Lute, Rod, appear more vivid each week, as though the universe itself agrees with the valley's revisions. One twilight. While crickets drowse and the air smells of cut hay, the sisters gather on Marta's porch. Lyra brings bread brushed with herb oil, Cora a bottle of nettle wine, Selene a sheaf of fresh star maps arrowed with new discoveries. They sit on the step where their father once mended boots. Remember the year we thought the river might swallow the bridge? Lyra asks. And we piled stones till our fingers blistered, Cora adds. We were building muscles for miracles, Selene says, half smile catching candle glow. They clink clay cups. Marta's glaze sparkles back at them, capturing hearthlight and skylight together. On the breeze floats the laughter of children, chasing fireflies, the kind of sound that would have broken hearts a season ago, had there been no food to follow it. Now it is as common as finches at dawn. The quiet reckoning of joy. Past midnight, when villagers sleep and hillside lanterns gutter low, the sisters walk to the bridge and watch river mist ghost above moonlit water. None speaks. Words feel too small. Instead, Lyra loosens the satchel strap, opens it, and whispers, "Supper time," once more. A single loaf appears, simple rye. Cora divides it, 4 equal pieces. They eat in silence, tasting grain, tasting peace, tasting whatever grows when fear is routed. Selene lifts the rod only halfway. The quartz tip emits a faint pulse, like a heartbeat measured against the star's slow turning. She says nothing. There is nothing to defend tonight, only blessings to notice. Into tomorrow. By first light they return home. Marta, already awake, pours tea. A letter waits on the sill, pressed by a pebble and marked with Solara points. Seal. Inside, Orion Vale congratulates Selene on her exemplary fusion of ostography and civic care, and invites her to present a paper on applied celestial ethics at the autumn symposium. Selene laughs. Her sisters cheer. Marta beams until tears thread her smile. The day marches forward. Goats to feed, kilns to fire, lessons to teach, council ledgers to balance. Yet everything hums with new meaning, for the valley has proven that miracles are not singular events but seeds. Once planted, they demand we weed, water, and harvest. Not once, but season after season. So ends Frost-Glen's new dawn. A chapter. Not of climax, but of continuum, where enchantment turns routine, routine turns communal, and communal becomes a beacon bright enough for distant travelers to see and steer by. The satchel, the lute, and the rod remain wondrous, yes, but the greater marvel is the village that learned to wield them with humility, imagination, and love. Should you ever pass through the highland woods and spy crimson silver midnight bunting, fluttering against snowy peaks, follow it. When you cross a stone bridge and smell cinnamon on the wind, you will know you have reached the valley that feeds the hungry, funds the curious, and lights the dark. Frost-Glen, where dawn never truly ends. Great work today. Every moment you spend practicing brings you closer to mastering your English listening and speaking skills. Remember, progress comes with patience and consistency. If this story inspired you or helped you in your learning journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Easy English Spark channel for more lessons and stories. Keep listening, keep speaking, and keep believing in your growth. I'll see you in the next video. Take care and keep shining.